thank you all so much for coming out today and joining us here at the Ethan Allen Homestead Museum. My name is Angie Grove. I'm the executive director here at the museum, and I appreciate you all coming back for our first in-person event for the spring after we've been closed down for the winter. So thank you all for coming out. I have a few announcements before we get started today. First up, I want to thank our sponsors for our community enrichment programs, Richard and Linda Smarg. They have generously supported our lectures, our field trip programs, our reenactments, and we really appreciate that. That being said, we are looking for more sponsors for the 2026 year. So if you own a business or corporation who might be interested in sponsoring our Homestead events, please see me after this talk. Okay. Also, we are a 501c3 nonprofit, so we are always looking for donors so we can expand the museum and remain sustainable. We do have a 230-year-old house to maintain. And if you know the costs of your house, you can imagine what our bills are for our house. So please consider donating. There is a donation basket at the door and a little replica of the house near the door, which is actually a donation box as well. So please go check that out on your way out. And if you are not already a member, please see the front desk on your way out and pick up a membership form. You do get benefits and early access to some of our exclusive events. And it is a great way to just become a sustainable donor as well to the museum annually. Okay. The last announcement I have before we really get started is that we have a brand new assistant director here at the museum. So this is her first official public engagement, and she's going to tell you about our upcoming events. Please help me welcome Kelly Bartlett.
Hi, everyone. Thank you. My name is Kelly Bartlett. I'm the new assistant director at the Ethan Allen Homestead. I'm so happy to see you all. I see several familiar faces, but a lot of new faces. So I'm looking forward to getting to know everyone. We do have some upcoming events that I'd like to share with you. First, I'd just like to thank our sponsors, Richard and Linda Smarg. So we have an exciting slate of upcoming events to share with you all. First, Thursday, April 9th from 6 to 8 p.m., we're offering our first craft night ever, where we will be needle felting fish. Does anyone here know what needle felting is? It's a fun little thing. Yeah. It's a fun therapeutic craft. You take a little needle and you kind of poke it felt over and over again, and then you will come home with a nice fish. No, you can't eat it, but you can display it in your home. And you can sign up to join that craft offering on our website. So once again, it's Thursday, April 9th from 6 to 8 p.m., which is right after our board meeting. So if there are any board members here, please hang out after and do the needle felting. Second, our next free monthly lecture will be in person and will be on Sunday, April 19th from 2 to 3 p.m. Our talk will be Remember Martha Powell and Be More Generous and Favorable to Her Than Your Ancestors. And that will be presented by, I wrote me, but it's actually Angie Grove, the director of the Ethan Allen Homestead. And please don't forget that our opening day is Friday, May 1st. Hope to see you there. And then just as a final note, May 10th is Green Mountain Boys Day, where we will have free admission for all. And we hope to see you at one or more of these events. So thank you so much. And let's turn it over to our speaker.
Thank you. Okay. Today we have the honor of having Benjamin Smith with us to deliver our lecture. Benjamin Smith is a professional writer and editor, as well as a lifelong history enthusiast. Previously, he served as managing editor for both American Revolution magazine and Civil War Historian magazine. Today, he serves as president and grant proposal writer for the Arnold Expedition Historical Society, and he edits the Maine Archaeological Society's newsletter and copy edits Archaeology of Eastern North America, which is published by the Eastern States Archeological Federation. That's quite a resume. He's also a member of the Cape Porpoise Archaeological Alliance. Benjamin resides in Wells, Maine, so we are so grateful that he has traveled out to Burlington today to speak to us about the Knox expedition. So please help me welcome Benjamin.
Thank you. Okay, can you hear me? Okay. My name is Benjamin Smith, and today I'll be presenting on A Tale of Two Trails. following in the footsteps of the Knox expedition. But before I begin, I want to thank everyone for coming here today. It's a packed house. I appreciate you spending time on a weekend here on the Ides of March, which is a good omen, I think. Yeah, unless you're Julius Caesar. I also want to thank the Ethan Allen Homestead Museum for inviting me here in the first place. I've never been here before. This is such a cool place. So this is a big honor for me. This is a real highlight. This is great. I also want to thank my father-in-law, Chet. Chet, would you raise your hand, please? Chet made this all happen. A few months ago, he and his wife, my mother-in-law, Chris, came here to the museum. And Chet mentioned to somebody that his son-in-law, me, occasionally speaks about the Revolutionary War, right? Is that kind of how it happened? Yeah. More or less. So, but I didn't know that. Right. So one day I go into my Google account and I got this message from the Ethan Allen Homestead Museum saying, hey, how would you like to talk about Ethan Allen? I said, I know nothing about Ethan Allen, but I know a few things about a few other Revolutionary War topics. And I said, I can speak on the Knox Trail and the Arnold Trail. They said, why don't you come and speak about the Knox Trail? So I said, great. So I'm here. So again, thank you everyone for being here. I'm looking forward to this. Okay, following in the footsteps of the Knox expedition. That's the title I ultimately chose for this presentation. The original title in my mind was Two Crazy Guys Do a Crazy Thing. And the two crazy guys are shown here. There's a very young Benjamin Smith to the right in that photo. Then there's a Knox marker, and then there's my good friend Alex Culpepper on the left. And the crazy thing we did was in April of 2012, we said, hey, we're going to hike the Knox Trail from Fort Ticonderoga all the way to Cambridge. And we did. And so today I'm going to be talking to you about the Knox Trail, why we decided to hike the Knox Trail, and what we learned along the way. Angie gave me a really great introduction, but I am just going to provide a little additional info about me for context, background. I've been a professional writer and editor since 2004. Right now, my career is focused on business proposal writing and grant proposal writing. But back in the day, I used to be an editor in educational publishing. It's actually how I met my wife, Corey. And I was also, for several years, I was involved in magazine publishing. As Angie mentioned, I used to be the managing editor for both Civil War Historian magazine and Patriots of the American Revolution magazine, which later became just simply American Revolution magazine. So I was the managing editor for both of those for several years. Really a wonderful experience, which led to me walking the Knox Trail in the first place. Even though today I'm a business proposal and grant proposal writer, I'm still very much involved in history. As Angie mentioned, I'm a board member and also the newsletter editor for the Maine Archaeological Society. I'm a volunteer for the Cape Porpoise Archaeological Alliance. This is a wonderful organization. What we do is we go out to several islands off of the coast of Kennebunkport, and we research and we excavate both American Indian sites and 17th century English sites. It's really a wonderful experience, and we found some really great stuff. Last summer, I found a bone tool, a Paleo-Indian tool. That's pretty cool. Let's see, what else? I am a copy editor for Archaeology of Eastern North America. This is an annual scholarly journal put out by the Eastern States Archeological Federation, of which I'm a member. And, as Angie mentioned, I'm the president and grant proposal writer for the Arnold Expedition Historical Society. I hope nobody minds. I'm just going to give a little plug to this organization. We're based in Pittston, Maine, and what we do is we promote and preserve parts of the Arnold Trail to Quebec. As some of you may know, 1775, Benedict Arnold led this crazy, daring, wild military expedition through the wilds of Maine to siege Quebec City. A lot of people don't know that parts of those trails you can still hike. And so we clear them in the summer after the winter, and we preserve them, and we put signage up and promote them. And this year, we are working with American Battlefield Trust to create a virtual Arnold Trail So people at home can explore the Arnold Trail, pull up photos and videos, or if you're driving the Arnold Trail, you can go to, use the website to learn more about like what exactly you're looking at when you're looking at a certain historical site. So a lot of good stuff. But let's go back in time. Late October, 2011. Back then, I was 35 years old, a long time ago. I was living in Dayton, Ohio. I had just gotten engaged to my now wife, and I was the managing editor for Patriots of the American Revolution magazine. And it was an evening, I was working late in the office. Everyone else had left. And I was working on this issue of the magazine, which was the January-February 2012 issue. And as you can see, the cover story was Benedict Arnold invades Quebec. Sidebar, even though this presentation is about Henry Knox, this fellow makes many cameos in this presentation. He just kind of pops up everywhere. But that evening in late October 2011, I was not actually editing that article. I was editing another article by a wonderful writer named Hugh Harrington that was about several topics, but it did touch upon Henry Knox and the Knox expedition. So, everyone else has left the office. I'm drinking coffee. I'm fact-checking this article by Hugh. I'm doing some minor edits to the article. You should know that back then, like today, I'm not really a Henry Knox expert. Back then, I knew a few things about Henry Knox. These are the broad strokes that I knew. He was a Boston bookseller, a militiaman, artillery officer. He ended up being the first Secretary of War. In November of 1775, Washington orders Knox to procure or obtain pieces of artillery at Fort Ticonderoga, New York, for use at Cambridge, Massachusetts. Using sleds, horses, and oxen, Knox transported over 50 pieces of artillery to Cambridge, arriving in late January. And then in March of that year, the artillery was placed at Dorchester Heights, and it forced the British to evacuate Boston. Okay? The British, they see these cannons, Dorchester Heights, and the British and loyalists get on their boats, and they go up, I believe they go up to like Halifax, Nova Scotia. They just get the heck out of Boston. Again, broad strokes. But I do want to point out that what Knox and his men did was remarkable. It was a logistical miracle. I can't imagine dragging cannons and howitzers and mortars from Fort Ticonderoga through the snow and ice all the way to Cambridge, and then surprising the British. The British evacuation of Boston was a major early moral and strategic victory for the American soldiers. And I believe still to this day in parts of Boston, they celebrate Evacuation Day, right? On March 17th, which is also St. Patrick's Day. I think I know what we're going to be doing on March 17th. We should go down. That's quite the celebration, geez. That's really all I knew. So I'm fact-checking this article, making some minor edits to Hugh's article. And I'm using Google, and I go down this rabbit hole, and I realize something. I learned something I never knew existed. That in 1926, 1927, stone markers with bronze plaques were erected to mark Knox's route back from Fort Ticonderoga to Cambridge. They were erected by the state governments of New York and Massachusetts. 30 markers were erected in New York, and 26 markers were placed in Massachusetts. And I see like a little map just like this. I had no idea this existed. I'm like, this is a great little historical heritage trail. I felt kind of embarrassed as the managing editor of a magazine about the American Revolution. I had no idea these markers existed. So kind of sheepishly, yeah.
Permissible to take pictures?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I'm fine with it if, yeah. Go ahead. Good question. So, kind of sheepishly, I email Hugh Harrington, the writer of this article. And I provide him a couple of links. And I'm like, hey, I feel kind of dumb, but I didn't know about these historical markers. Did you? I'm getting ready to close up for the night. And, real quick, sorry, one other thing. These are what the markers look like. The one on the left, those are the New York markers. You can tell there's an image and text on the bronze plaque, which is on a stone monument or marker. The one on the right, those are the Massachusetts markers. There's a little image on a bronze plaque, and then most of the text explaining the significance is actually right in the marker itself.
I think the DAR was involved with that too.
Oh, it could be. I'm sure. I mean, they put up lots of markers around the time. So I just wanted to point that out. So I send this email to Hugh. I'm closing up shop. I get a phone call. Okay. That's not a real photo of the real phone call. That's a reenactment. It's Hugh Harrington on the phone. He sees my email, gets so excited, he does not email me back. He calls me right away. And he's like, I never knew about these markers. Now, if Hugh Harrington didn't know about these markers, and he is just a font of knowledge about the American Revolution and a great writer about the American Revolution, like, wow, we've got kind of an interesting situation here. So Hugh and I kind of go back and forth. We're kind of like, on one hand, kind of embarrassed that we didn't know these markers existed. But then we're also kind of sad because if we didn't know these markers existed, there's a whole lot of other people out there who don't know the markers exist. So Hugh and I talked for a few minutes. We're both kind of like scratching our heads like, wow, this is pretty wild. I hang up and I drive home. On the car ride home, I get the idea. I'm going to hike the Knox Trail. First of all, what a great adventure to hike along this new to me historical trail through two of my favorite states, New York and Massachusetts. Second of all, I'm thinking, wow, what a great content for the magazine. I can take photos, I can write articles, I can interview local historians. I can get a lot of content out of this. And really, I was like, wow, this could be just fun. This could be fun. So I get home, having dinner with Corey, and the idea becomes the in-person conversation. Again, that's not really me or Corey, that's a reenactment photo. Something you should know. Again, this is like October 29th, October 30th. 2 weeks prior, I had just proposed to her. We had just gotten engaged. So Corey is in this interesting position of listening to me talk about this wonderful idea I have. And basically what I'm kind of saying to her is, hey, I know you and your mom are planning our wedding next year. Do that. I'm planning this awesome hike in the middle of nowhere that's going to happen a few months before the wedding. Cool? So I had to explain this idea like 3 times to Corey because it's a weird idea. To her infinite credit, Corey is a saint. She said, yes, she is. She says, this is a cool idea. I understand why you want to do this. You have the green light for me. You have my permission. With one condition. You can't do this by yourself. Which I hadn't thought of. I was just going to go marching in the woods by myself. But in retrospect, she's smart. So I thought about it for 2 seconds. Who am I going to invite? Well, I knew. This guy, the travel companion. This is my good friend, Alex Culpepper. This is such a ridiculous photo. But I love it because it kind of reflects the spirit of Alex. He's kind of like a beatnik in a way. There's a few reasons why I thought of Alex. One, we were really good friends, and we still remain very good friends. I knew he and I could probably hike across 2 states and not strangle each other. And it's true, he was a wonderful travel companion. 2, he was always up for adventure, and I knew he would really like this opportunity. 3, while I was the managing editor for the magazine, Alex was the copy editor. I mean, he copy edited a bunch of different magazines at the time, but he was definitely a copy editor for Patriots of the American Revolution. I knew he was a history buff. He, like me, really liked the Revolutionary War. I knew he'd be really interested. The final reason is Alex is very tall and very strong. And I knew if somebody saw he and I walking along some deserted country road, they'd take one look at Alex and say, I'm not going to mess with these 2 guys. Kind of like my bodyguard along the trail. So now that I have the travel companion, the idea becomes the plan. So we at the magazine created, following their footsteps, the Knox Trail Honor Walk. And we promoted the heck out of this in our own magazine and other historical magazines, on social media. We sent out press releases to newspapers in New England. I was on talk radio several times talking about this. I was on one or two local TV news shows about this. We really promoted the heck out of this. That Alex and I were going to walk the Henry Knox Trail, So eventually kind of like the goals of this kind of morphed and refined itself. First goal was we really wanted to honor Henry Knox and his noble train of artillery. Again, and just remind people that, what Knox and his men did was remarkable. They're really American heroes, They deserve that recognition. We also wanted to raise awareness of and promote the Knox Trail as a unique American historical route. And then we thought, let's do some real good with this. So we decided to raise money for 4 organizations that were either on the Knox Trail or had connections to Knox. Fort Ticonderoga, New York State Military Museum, Boston National Historical Park, and Montpelier, the General Henry Knox Museum. So this was the itinerary. We'd fly from Dayton, Ohio, to Albany, New York, and then take a shuttle to Fort Ticonderoga on April 5th. We would start walking on Friday. Incidentally, it ended up being Good Friday that year. On April 6th, we would hopefully arrive in Cambridge on April 21st. And then we were going to drive back to Dayton in a rental car on Sunday, April 22nd. Total duration, 18 days. Nice chunk of time, not as much time as I wanted to, but I was about as much as Alex and I could take off and do the walk. So that was the itinerary. Here's the reality. That's Alex collapsed at a marker in Ghent, New York, I believe. And he's not doing that for dramatic purposes. So on average, we walked between 10 to 13 miles a day. Sometimes the elevation was great. Sometimes it was very steep. Sometimes we were walking along major highways, sometimes little state roads, We quickly fell behind schedule and had to take taxis through certain areas, such as Albany and Springfield. We arrived in Cambridge the evening of Friday, April 20th, and we experienced lots of charms of the road. Both Alex and I developed the worst blisters we've ever had. We have bruised toenails, weird weather. Some days it was very hot, some days it was freezing cold. Some days I thought it was going to start snowing. Poison ivy, somehow Alex and I both got poison ivy. I got a ton of spider bites. And yeah, there was some exhaustion some days. But I gotta tell you, it was like one of the best adventures I've ever had. If I could go back in time and be young again and do this, I probably would. We really had a great time. We learned so much, which I'll get into what we learned. And we made actually a lot of friends. Some of the friends we met are here. Gary Levier, he's an author and historian. I believe he lived in Lee, Massachusetts. We met him. We met Tom Ragusa. He's a historian in Otis, Massachusetts. And then Ron Couture. Ron, I could not find your photo anywhere. All apologies. I had to use a little icon for you. We met him in Brookfield, Massachusetts. He was, and I think he still is, a Brookfield Historical Commission member. So we learned a lot from these 3 people. Actually, there was many more people we learned a lot from, but these were the 3 main ones. But before I talk about what we learned, I want to show some photos. I went back in preparation for this presentation to look back at old photos that I took in 2012. And I think they're kind of fun. Some of them I took with a digital camera. Some of them I took with a BlackBerry. Do you guys remember BlackBerries? I love my BlackBerry. So let's look at some of these photos. Then we'll get to like really, what did we learn by hiking the Knox Trail? Okay. That left photo, that's our tent where we spent that first night, April 5th in Ticonderoga. And then to the right is a photo of me in the fort. That is the first #1, numero uno, Knox Trail marker. I was such an innocent babe back then. And I want to, a few years ago, I wrote some articles about this hiking the Knox Trail. And occasionally I'm going to read from these to provide some additional context. So, first night, we get to Ticonderoga, and we set up our tent. To our left, invisible in the expansive darkness, was the fort itself. Somewhere straight ahead loomed Lake Champlain and Vermont. The moon above was small and skull white, and dead leaves swirled and circled in the air. Alex and I crawled into our sleeping bags and had the worst sleep in our lives. Due to the cold and the anticipation of the adventure ahead, the next morning we were given a tour of Fort Ticonderoga by Rich Strum, the director of education. In his courtyard, we noticed a granite rectangle and a large bronze plaque, the first of the New York markers. Standing in the whipping wind and looking out at the beautiful yet desolate wilderness surrounding the stronghold, I had the impression we were about to leave the very spear tip of civilization. Unseen crows called in the far distance. The realization of what was to come hit me. What the heck were we doing here? I'm smiling in that photo. That's a very nervous smile. Well, what we were there to do, we were there to walk, and we started walking. In the first few days, we walked south along Route 9 along Lake George, which I fell in love with Lake George. It is a beautiful lake. I really, really enjoyed it. And so we'd walk, and occasionally we'd come upon a Knox Trail marker. To our left always was like this beautiful, beautiful, beautiful lake. Some other photos. Okay, on the left, that is a modern abstract steel sculpture of the Noble Train of Artillery by New York artist Michel Vera. That was near Schuylerville, New York. And then this was fun. I think it's in Otis. There's the Knox Trail Inn, established circa 1820. Really good food. Really good food. I share both of these photos because it's a good point to remind myself and to tell you that when we were walking the Knox Trail, every once in a while we'd see these references to Knox. So his spirit is kind of there on the trail. Lots of people would come out and meet us. Because we advertise it in the magazine and the newspapers on the radio, the entire time, and this is interesting, the entire time we're hiking, I'm getting on my BlackBerry little emails and texts saying, hey, when do you think you're going to arrive in this town? When do you think you're going to arrive in that town? So the entire time I'm hiking, I'm trying to text and send emails. This is East Greenbush, New York. We had a nice little group come out and meet us. An interesting thing about this, one of the gentlemen here, I think it's the guy right behind the Knox marker, participated in the 1975 reenactment of the Knox expedition. So 1975, groups in New York and Massachusetts kind of did a full reenactment in colonial gear and so forth, dragging cannons from Fort Ticonderoga to Cambridge. He had participated in that. And he loved the fact that two idiots were now trying to do the same thing in 2012. He also showed me a commemorative coin of that 1975 reenactment, which I've never seen before or since. Kind of really neat. People came out to meet us in Blandford, Massachusetts. I remember this very distinctly because the entire time we're walking to Blandford, we're walking up an elevation, and it was the hottest day of the trip. By the time we get there, we were sweaty and disgusting and thirsty and tired. But they were a great group. They were very fun, very enthusiastic to see us. This is a group that came out to meet us in Brookfield. So this is funny. We start entering Brookfield, and the most interesting thing happens. People start pouring out of their houses with little American flags waving, coming to talk to us. And Alex is like, hey, this is pretty cool. And then these guys in colonial gear with muskets show up and like, hey, we've been waiting for you. Great. So we get to the Knox Trail marker in Brookfield, and they give us like a musket salute. It was really cool. It was great. We met a lot of people who were really excited that we were doing this, Okay, I did not take this photo because I'm not a time traveler. But this is a photo from 1927 that was given to us in Brookfield, Massachusetts. This is a photo showing the celebration honoring the placement of the Knox Trail marker in Brookfield, Mass. in 1927. If you could look closely, you can see people on horses wearing 18th century clothing. Looks like they had a good time. So I just think that's a cool photo. Okay, and this is me at the last monument, Dorchester Heights. I'm like, I am done. I remember this so distinctly. I had three very strong emotions. One was I was so happy that we actually achieved this. We did it. We did it. I was so happy to see my fiance and go home. I was also sad that the adventure was over. I really loved hiking the Knox Trail. Alex and I had a great time. So it's a very complex, emotional photo there. Now, what did we learn? We learned a lot. Some of it might seem obvious, some might not. First thing we learned, really in a way, there are two Knox trails. The one actually traversed by the Knox expedition in 1775 and 1776, and the one created by the placement of historical markers in 1926, 1927. Seems obvious, didn't really hit us until at first we're walking down from Fort Ticonderoga to the village of Lake George, along Lake George on Route 9, and occasionally we get to a marker and be like, oh yes, this is so cool. This is where the expedition came down. And you were like, no, this is just a marker. They actually rode down Lake George in bateaus or little boats. But you can't place a stone marker in the middle of a lake. So they had to make do. So it's kind of a little disconnect there. This disconnect and reinforcement of the fact that there's really two trails, we realized when we were walking along the Hudson River. While some sources indicate that Knox and his men traveled mostly along the western side of the Hudson on their way to Albany, a few of the markers we passed prior to reaching the state capital were located on the eastern side. And there remains some debate about where exactly the party crossed the Hudson and how many times they crossed. So what this means is you might be at a marker west of the river, but they actually might have crossed on the east side, or vice versa. So, it's not a apples to apples, 1-to-1 ratio. There's it's kind of like two separate trails. What we learned part 2, there are countless, and I mean countless, historical points of interest along the Knox Trail that have nothing to do with Henry Knox. Okay? I had to whittle this down. My presentation was originally like 200 slides. I'm not joking. I had pictures of so many historical sites. I had to whittle it down. So one of the first things we saw, we get to the village of Lake George. And if you go to the village of Lake George, on the southern part of Lake George, there's Fort William Henry. It's a big tourist attraction. But east of there, near one of the Knox markers, is the remains of Fort George. This was a British fort. It was created by the British during the French and Indian Wars in the 1750s. An interesting note, again, I told you Benedict Arnold kind of pops up a lot in this. So, in 1775, Benedict Arnold and his expedition go through Maine, right? Lay siege to Quebec. Doesn't work out. They retreat, but they don't go back through Maine. They go along Lake Champlain, and they end up in Crown Point, New York. Okay? Kind of a defeated, shoddy army at this point. But they were also, it was a sick army. A lot of people had developed smallpox. So what they did is, Arnold and his leaders, they separated the remaining army in two groups. The healthy soldiers went to Fort Ticonderoga. The sick soldiers with the smallpox, they went down and stayed and quarantined at Lake George. Kind of interesting. Unfortunately, in 1780, the British came and they destroyed the heck out of this fort. You go there now and there's basically like a stone pile. That's all that remains. But still, it's a really cool site to visit. Highly suggest it. Okay. We got a private tour of Saratoga Battlefield Park when we were on the walk. And the rangers showed us a lot of cool things. One of the things they showed us was this boot monument. Does anyone know what does it refer to? Benedict Arnold, once again. So Benedict Arnold, before he was a trader, was actually a pretty daring, brave military leader. And at I think it's the Second Battle of Saratoga, he rushes towards the British defenses in this kind of mad, daring attack, gets shot in the leg, gets pretty severely wounded. I think he had it took him 2 months to recover from this. So years later at Saratoga Battlefield, they wanted to acknowledge his bravery, which kind of helped save the day at Saratoga, which led to the French joining our side in the Revolutionary War, which helped us win the Revolutionary War. But they didn't want to put a bust in this big monument to a guy who ended up being a traitor. So they put this there's no words, there's no inscription, there's just a boot. And I remember when we got there, the ranger was like, do you know the significance of this boot? And I'm like, oh, it's one of Henry Knox's boots? I have no idea. No, it's Benedict Arnold. Okay, this was wild. We're walking through the town, small town of Half Moon, New York. And all of a sudden we see a Henry Hudson marker. So apparently the explorer Henry Hudson sailed there. I believe Henry Hudson's boat was called the Half Moon. And so I would imagine that's where the town got its name. And the marker itself reads, September 22nd, 1609, stopped here by shallow water in Hudson River in search for the Northwest Passage. Yeah. Which, I mean, we come upon this marker and we're just like standing there like, oh my gosh, this is wild. Again, there is so much history along the Knox Trail. It is wild. Okay. I think it's pronounced Kralo State Historic Site. So, this was cool. I remember this very distinctly. Alex and I leave Albany, New York, and we're crossing, I think it's called the Dunn Memorial Bridge across the Hudson River, on our way to Rensselaer, New York. And we get there, and we meet a few people there who show us Fort Kralo, which is, it's basically a fortified house. It's not like a big fort like Ticonderoga, but it was used as a fortified house. And according to stories and some records and lots of legend, it was at Fort Kralo where British Army surgeon Richard Shuckburgh supposedly wrote the lyrics to Yankee Doodle in 1750s, making fun of the uncouth colonial soldiers. Just really cool. We had no idea. We're crossing the bridge and there's people there and like, you should check this site out. This is where the lyrics of Yankee Doodle were written. I'm like, wow, this is great. No idea. Okay, these two photos are from Kinderhook, New York. Kinderhook, New York ended up being one of my favorite places along the trail. In my article, I describe Kinderhook as quaint and quiet in both a colonial Dutch and New England sort of way, chock full of history. Martin Van Buren, the 8th president of the United States, was born here. That's Alex with Martin's statue, just hanging out. Nearby stands Lindenwold, a mansion purchased by Van Buren, and where the first great American author, Washington Irving, wrote The Legend of Sleepy Hollow. I had no idea about that, and I'm a big Washington Irving fan. So when I found that out, I was very excited. Let's see. British General John Burgoyne was entertained as a prisoner after Saratoga in a stately house in the village. Likewise, Benedict Arnold was treated for wounds to his leg at that house, the Benedict Arnold house. And these are private houses. I mean, people just live in them now. I remember being like really jealous. It's like, I want to live in the Benedict Arnold house. Okay. There's going to be some controversy here, perhaps. Great Barrington. There's a marker here. First Courthouse of Berkshire County marker, Great Barrington. The text says on the marker, near the spot stood the first courthouse of Berkshire County, erected 1764. Here, August 16th, 1774, occurred the first open resistance to British rule in America. A year after the Boston Tea Party. Remember Alex and I reading this, and we're like, and Gary Levier was showing us, you know, we're like, hey Gary, I think there's something wrong with your marker. You gotta. He's like, well, he kind of explained it. The Tea Party was kind of covert. This was first real open. So basically what happened, there was a British appointed judge who wanted to get into the courthouse to, you know, make some rulings and reinforce the intolerable acts. And the locals said, no, you're not allowed in this courthouse. And they drove him away. So I did not write this marker, okay? But it's there. It's kind of cool. All right. This is very strange. This is the Spooner Well marker in Brookfield, Massachusetts. Let me give you some context about this. So this is where, you know, we were in Brookfield, and Ron Couture was kind of giving us a tour. Bear with me. Okay, yeah. The Spooner Well. So in March of 1778, 3 soldiers, 1 patriot and 2 escaped redcoats, murdered a local farmer, Joshua Spooner, and they threw him down a well at the urging of Spooner's wife, Bathsheba. Kind of interesting. So eventually all 4 were executed. Just kind of an odd marker that you know, we're expecting to just see Knox Trail markers, and there's people being tossed down wells. And, you know. Okay, and this was really cool. This is the Cambridge, Massachusetts. So, you can see there's a Knox Trail marker to the right at the base of the tree. But to the left, kind of near the center, is another marker. It says, under this tree, Washington first took command of the Continental Army, July 3rd, 1775. That was awesome. That's also the spot, same spot, where Knox delivered the cannon to Washington. It's like awesome, sacred ground. It's interesting, there's like a baseball diamond right next to it now. But such a cool spot. Just neat stuff. Okay, what else did we learn? There's some debate as to the number of original markers. Remember, when I was originally doing the research, reading Hugh Harrington's article, I came across several sites that said there were 56 markers. There is some question, though, about how many New York Knox monuments originally existed, 30 or 31. When we were traveling through New York, we met several people who said, there was another marker. There were actually 31 markers in New York, but it either was destroyed or, I don't know about this, they can't remember where they placed it. It happens, right? It's like one of those things where you just kind of nod and we don't want to ask too many follow-up questions. How do you lose a marker? But then it gets kind of real in Massachusetts about how many Knox markers are in Massachusetts. How many originally existed, 26 or 27? Because when we met Tom Ragusa, local historian in Otis, he took us to this marker, which at the time, in 2012, was not listed with the rest of the Massachusetts markers. It was kind of a forgotten marker. That's in East Otis on Route 23. And one of Tom's pet passions was making people aware of this and that it should be added to the Knox Trail marker. So I kind of laugh about the New York thing, like, yeah, sure, there was a missing marker. But there actually ended up being a missing marker in Massachusetts that Tom Ragusa kind of promoted. What else did we learn? Oh, we have learned that people have moved and modified markers over the years. The last 4 monuments in New York were moved to more accurate sites in the 1970s. Also, I remember we did this in 2012. My understanding is that there have been additional markers added. So now there's like 61 markers. So, and this, I just found this interesting. That's Gary Levier. In this photo, there was a 9/11 memorial plaque that was added to the Knox Monument in North Egremont, Massachusetts. So, these things move, they get moved around, they maybe disappear, they get modified. History is a living, breathing thing. Okay, this came up a lot. Lots of questions and myths remain about the expedition. One of the questions that people kind of asked us, and we had no idea, and we asked other people, why didn't the British or local loyalists try to stop Knox's train of artillery from reaching Cambridge? We heard several different theories. One was that, of course, it took place in winter. Nobody was really expecting this. Most military operations back then occurred in warmer months. So I guess it really might not have been on the radar of the British. There were quite a few loyalists in western Massachusetts. So it's like, well, why didn't they do anything? And one local historian, it might have been Gary, I can't remember, said, well, remember, if they had done something to the Knox Trail, or the Knox expedition, or alerted people, they would probably, get a very angry visit from their patriot neighbors. So, what happened to the missing pieces of artillery? According to some notes or records, when Knox gets to Fort Ticonderoga, he takes 58 or 59 pieces of artillery, guns, mortars, howitzers, back to Cambridge. But by the time he gets to Cambridge, there's 55. What happened to the guns? Well, one mortar was lost while crossing the Mohawk River, just kind of fell into the water. But the whereabouts of the other missing weapons is unclear. There were some stories in Western Mass about that 2 cannons may have been left behind at North Egremont, where they guarded the village green for many years. As the story goes, they were eventually purchased by a local farmer and then disappeared. Legend has it that one cannon was used in the foundation of a nearby home. So we don't really know. And then, did people actually find cannonballs along the route? Apparently in Western Mass, people would find cannonballs out in the middle of the woods and say, aha, this is proof that the Knox expedition came right here. Well, maybe, maybe not. There's no record of Knox actually taking cannonballs back with him because there was a foundry that can make cannonballs right in Cambridge. So one less thing to carry. But, in Western Mass, in the Revolution, there were other times where guns and cannonballs and ammunition were traveled back and forth. Maybe these were cannonballs from another military operation. Maybe people were just making stuff up. We don't know. Lots of questions and myths remain. Okay, what else did we learn? This is interesting stuff, I think. From Ghent to New York to Boston, Massachusetts, Knox basically followed the Great Road. Okay, so I wrote a little bit about this. At the end of the Knox Trail Honor Walk's New York leg and the beginning of the Massachusetts leg, Alex and I traveled by car because Gary Livier wanted to drive us around and show us local remnants of the actual road that Knox and his fellow patriots had followed, more or less, all the way from Ghent, New York to Cambridge, Massachusetts. And again, this did not really kind of line up 100% with where the markers were placed. This thoroughfare has been known by many names over the years, including the Great Road. Sections of it originated from American Indian trails. After British General Jeffrey Amherst improved and developed parts of it during the French and Indian War, it would eventually stretch from Albany to Boston. Today, only the occasional ridge, overgrown path, or stone wall remains, some of which Gary pointed out to us on a drive from Ghent to the Knox marker in Great Barrington, Massachusetts. So, Alex and I get to Great Barrington. We see the Knox Trail marker. We see that other marker about the 1774 resistance. And that night, we spend the night in Beartown State Forest, which was interesting because in the middle of the night, I heard my first fisher cat screech. I had no idea what a fisher cat sounded like. I'll be honest, I'm not even sure at the time I knew there was a thing called a fisher cat. But in the middle of the night, it sounded like somebody was being stabbed in the woods just outside their tent. So, after a sleepless night in the wilds of Beartown State Forest, Alex and I were met by Tom Ragusa, who was then the chairman of the Otis Historical Commission. Tom drove us to the Knox marker in Monterey, then led us on a 3-hour-long walking tour of Otis State Forest to see more Great Road ruins up close, such as this. These are the remains of a wall along the Great Road in Otis State Forest. After showing us the stone remains of an 18th century tavern called the Spring Tavern, Tom directed us down a slight decline, now overgrown with trees. This was a portion of the Great Road that Tom rediscovered in September of 2011. Tom guesstimated that Alex and I were around the 12th or 13th people to walk this part of the road since it was discontinued in 1827. So you kind of see from the foreground up, there is an outline of a road or a trail. I wrote back then, I felt like a kid at Christmas and Indiana Jones all at the same time. Tom also showed us this. It's really hard to see, but there's a boulder, and on it, scratched into it, it says 65 miles to Albany. Kind of neat. We also learned that sections of the Great Road that ran from Springfield to Boston was known as the Boston Post Road. And so we're in Brookfield, Massachusetts, and Ron Couture is giving us a tour. And this is neat. So Ron explains, section of the Great Road running from Springfield through Brookfield to Boston was known as the Boston Post Road. Ron and his organization, the Historical Commission, they put up these white Boston Post Road signs next to the original stone markers that you can see. So according to these signs, the Boston Post Road was the first mail route in North America, established in 1673 by King Charles II of England. In 1767, while Benjamin Franklin was Postmaster General, mileage was marked out with stone markers, those stone guys right there at the bottom, from Boston to New York City. Kind of neat stuff. So, we're winding down here. I wanted to share some reflections and recommendations. First of all, drive the Knox Trail. Don't hike it. Don't. definitely drive it. If you want to learn about colonial American history or the Revolutionary War, you have to drive the Knox Trail, really. And you're going to learn about Henry Knox, but you're going to learn about so much more. Every place we stopped along the way was wonderful. We loved every location. But there were 5 that really stood out to us. Ticonderoga, New York, Lake George, New York, Kinderhook, New York, Great Barrington, Massachusetts, and Brookfield, Mass. All of these places were great, lots of fun stuff to do, but so much history there, and the people were really nice. If you're going to go to these places and drive along the Knox Trail, highly suggest reaching out to local historians. They will be able to tell you things you're not going to be able to get in a book or a pamphlet or a website. Really, do some research if you want to do this. Plan it out. You will not be disappointed. You're going to learn so much. Personally, I fell in love with these 5 areas, especially Ticonderoga and Lake George. I've been back a lot. In the autumn of 2013, I gave a presentation about the Knox Trail Walk at Fort Ticonderoga, which was awesome. Last November, I was back for an Eastern States Archaeological Conference. I got to walk around and see some of the old Knox markers that I remember walking by back in 2012. And as kind of a postscript, back in 2023, my wife Corey and I went on vacation to Lake George with some friends, including Alex Culpepper and his wife Rosemary. Alex was a bachelor originally on the walk, but now he's married. And I think it was Corey took this candid photo. There's Alex. There's me. We're on a dock in Lake George. I'm pointing to the mountains, and we're reminiscing. And I love this. You got 2 men, now firmly in middle age, reflecting on a great adventure they once had. So, and that great adventure could be yours. That's it. Thank you. So,
We're going to offer some time for Q&A.
okay, yeah, Q&A, yeah.
Yeah, okay, so we have about 5 to 7 minutes that we can do for Q&A. So, yeah, go ahead. We'll start there.
Were you tempted to bring along some cannons with you?
No. It's funny, though. Every time we'd go to a town and a group of people would meet us, somebody would say, "Where's the cannons? Where's the oxen?"
One in every crowd.
The one in every crowd, yes.
Are you familiar with, there's not many books out there about the Knox Expedition, or whatever you want to call it, the Knox Trail. But I'm reading like the Johnny Tremaine version called Cannons for a Cause.
Yeah.
Wonderful book, and so many of the things that you just mentioned, Great Barrington, that are in the book. So it's like Johnny Tremaine, except it's about another boy, 16-year-old, who is driving horses.
Oh.
And he, with his dad,
Did not know that.
was in the
The title was
Yeah.
Cannons for a Cause?
Cannons for
Okay.
a Cause. I
Just
can't
Gonna
think of-
repeat that into the mic to make sure.
Cannons for a cause.
There you
I
go.
can't think of the author right now. It's
Is
on
it the
Kindle.
same author as Johnny Tremaine?
No.
Oh, okay.
No. But it's a wonderful book, and it talks about all the logistics. How do you haul cannons up a mountain? How do you haul them down without the sledge running the horses? Just
That's good. Okay, good. I did not know. I did not aware of that. So thank you. Okay.
Is there any documentation of the weight of these cannons? Some of these have been several tons.
18 ounces to the pound.
Yeah, I think there are. I think there's some. But again, there are some records about this. The question is, are the records 100% accurate? 'Cause again, like even the number of cannons. Some people say they took 58. Some said they took 59 from Fort Ty. So yeah, good question. Yes, go ahead.
So I just have to point out a little bit of an irony. We haven't really spoken about Ethan Allen, but we're in his homestead.
Yeah.
So to what extent do we really owe a debt to 3 characters that showed up through the Revolution after their first mission, which would have been Benedict Arnold, Seth Warner, and Ethan Allen standing on the shores of Lake Champlain before they took Fort Ticonderoga.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. No, good point. And it's funny, when we were hiking the Knox Trail, we would meet with local historians, and the same names kept popping up. Not just Knox, but Benedict Arnold, Ethan Allen, John Burgoyne,
Can I add something in there? Because
sure.
one of the things I was thinking about while listening to the presentation was where was Ethan Allen during all of this, right? For those of you who maybe don't know, Ethan Allen was captured just a few months before the expedition started. So by the time the expedition started, he was in London, in Pendennis Castle, in prison, and then was on prison ships in Halifax, in South Carolina, in New York. Eventually, he was paroled on Long Island, and he was in prison for almost 3 years. And if you want to learn more about that, Ethan Allen's imprisonment is actually part of the featured exhibit right on the other side of this wall. So when you're done with the presentation, you can say, okay, while the Knox expedition is going on, this is where Ethan Allen was. Yeah.
Go ahead. Yes.
This is the same Knox that has the big house over in Thomaston, Maine.
Yeah.
How did he end up there? Or did he come from there?
No, he's from Boston.
Well, how did that, what's that house?
That was his house. After the revolution, yeah, he moved up there. Yeah. It's only a few hours from where I live now.
Right.
And I've gone up, but I've never been able to go inside it. It's been kind of closed for repairs. Real quick, oh gosh, I got to point out something about Maine. Speaking about Maine, today, March 15th, is Maine's birthday. On this day in 1820, Maine became the 23rd state. Shout out to Maine. Yes, go ahead.
Fun fact, Henry Knox actually named one of the cannons Lucy.
Real, I think somebody might have mentioned that to me. He named it Lucy. That's his wife's name. Yeah. That's you could. That was the loose can. Yeah. Very good.
Near and dear to our hearts here at Ethan Allen Homestead, of course, is Ethan Allen's involvement in all this. So on May 9th, he and Benedict Arnold and their men met down in Castleton, Vermont, and they had a war council and decided the plan of action that overnight they marched to the lake and went across, and on May 10th they took Fort Ticonderoga on the date of May 10th. So in Castleton, they celebrate that, and I was there last May 9th for it. They celebrate it once every 50 years. Only every 50 years. So I'm just barely, at 119 years old, just barely going to make the next one.
Why every 50 years?
I don't know. I couldn't get an answer from anybody.
Yes.
Do you know how many soldiers were with Knox?
I don't. I think maybe I did at some point, but again, I wouldn't trust the actual records. Sometimes, like I know in the Arnold Expedition, I'll give a different example. They were hiking through Maine. People from local towns would just join. They didn't always keep track of everyone. So, yeah. Okay, yes.
I've always wondered why Ethan Allen and the Green Mountain Boys took Ty in May when they knew they couldn't move the cannons until snow. Any idea?
Yeah, the going theory, because it's not like any one of them was interviewed by anybody and asked this question, but the going theory is that they heard about Lexington and Concord and then immediately said, let's go take Fort Ticonderoga. Some people suspect it was not just to hit the British, but also New York, since they were against New York, and the fort is on the New York side, but also they wanted leverage for their claim to get Vermont identified as a separate colony, and at this point then, or soon after this point, state from New York. So the Vermont contingency was able to say, look what we're contributing to the American cause. Shouldn't Vermont be its own state? But I also have an expert over here with his hand up. Tom, did you want to add in?
Yes, please.
Yes. Oh, Tom, come on up and say.
Sure.
Do you want to introduce yourself briefly?
Sure.
Okay.
My name's Tom Hughes. I worked on Ethan Allen in Castleton last May 9th. The war breaks out, and the problem is still, after conquering Lexington, that the British have blockaded the port of Boston, which basically is shutting down trade for New England as retaliation for dumping the tea. So, got to get the British out. The only way to do that is with firepower, cannon. That's all on Lake Champlain, Crown Point, and Ticonderoga. So they liberated them before they could haul them because they knew that the war had started. And believe it or not, 3 weeks after conquering Lexington, the British at Ticonderoga and Crown Point did not yet know that the war had started. So it was a matter of rushing to the scene, because these forts, if they were on alert, they had 78 cannon at one and 111 at the other. You couldn't go in even at night when they were sleeping with muskets and take them if they were on alert and ready, expecting something. They were so not expecting anything, because where's the enemy? British Canada, British America. Where's their enemy? Across the ocean? So it was a surprise, but still daring. I mean, come on. That takes courage to be just guys with muskets thinking that they can steal a fort from the British.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
Yeah, let's. I think we have time for 2 more questions, and then you will be sticking around for a little bit after for anyone who has extra.
Sure.
Okay. So we have time for 2 more questions.
Yes.
So, just to refresh, what was the distance they went and how long did it take?
Okay. I knew somebody was going to ask me that.
What's the distance you went?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, I think they left in November Fort Ti in 1775, and they came back to Cambridge in January of 1776, and I think it's like 190 miles from Fort Ti to Cambridge, but like obviously more than that if you doubled it, because they had to go there first, then come back.
Just trying to figure out how many miles a day that they were able to. You did your 10 or 15.
Yeah, I have no idea. I think, yeah, especially with the horses and the oxen and the sleds and the ice. They had ice and snow to deal with. We did not. Yeah. All right, one. Yeah.
In identifying this, there were a lot of Indian fighters in the north out of Boston. They're heavily involved in kinships, just by numbers, colonial based. And I believe the first identifier of the cannon is the Colonel John Brown. He's of Pittsfield, I think. So he writes a letter to Continental Congress or letter writers, I'm not sure which. I don't think I've seen that letter, identifying him. He ends up in the fray with Ethan Allen and Arnold. There's a botched raid. There's accusations. The Allens do take a hit out of this. John goes on to, I think, be the first accuser of Benedict Arnold. He was mentored by, I think, Oliver, who might have been the son of one of the Rhode Island governors, and John ends up at Stone Arabia, dying in the Mohawk Valley of New York during the Revolution. And that's kind of the stuff I look at.
Yeah, there's lots of stuff. I mean, there's a lot to know.
yes. Thank you all so much for sharing your stories, your questions. We have just real quick, a few other thank yous. We have a thank you to our volunteers, Betsy, Margaret, and Rich, who brought the refreshments. Thank you to our volunteer, Joe, who is at the front desk. He has membership forms waiting for you. That's also where the donation box is located. The gift shop is open if you wanted to grab a few things. Actually, JC, there's a little baggie back there, little gift bag. Yeah, pass it over to JC, please. JC, can you pull out and show, just because of the crowd, we have a little gift for you, Benjamin.
Oh,
this is a custom, only made for the Homestead Green Mountain Boys hat.
Thank you very much.
Yeah,
Thank you.
there's a card in there, too.
Oh, thank you very much.
Yes, and thank you again to Richard and Linda Smark for their sponsorship, and Benjamin Smith, thank you one more time for your presentation.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.